Have you ever wondered why a man who once couldn't take his eyes off you suddenly grows silent, distracted, as if a veil of distance has fallen between you? Most women assume passion dies because he no longer desires them, but the deeper truth is far stranger. Sometimes his silence is not rejection at all, but a mirror of your own hidden longing. What you think pushes him away may, in fact, be the very thing that draws him closer, if only you knew how to touch the core of his unconscious. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious speaks in symbols, and desire between man and woman is no exception. Desire does not die easily, it is not a candle that burns out, but an ancient fire that retreats into the shadows when it is no longer fed by the mystery of polarity. A man withdraws when he senses the archetypal feminine no longer alive before him, when she has lost her own spark to fear, to overexposure, to the unconscious burden of needing his attention more than her own radiance. Women are taught to cling tighter when he grows cold, but Jung would remind us, what one resists in the other is often a reflection of what is unloved within the self. His silence is the echo of her unspoken need to rediscover herself. To reignite his desire is not to beg, not to demand, not to twist oneself into performance. It is to speak in the language his soul has forgotten it longs for, the language of polarity, of energy, of archetypes that live beyond the surface. And sometimes, it is as simple as 3 words. Not the 3 words that every movie teaches you to whisper, but words that pierce through his ego and awaken the buried masculine force inside him. These words are not a spell but a signal, not manipulation but invocation, summoning him from passivity into presence. The male psyche, Jung observed, is not merely logical but profoundly symbolic. A man does not fall in love with actions alone but with the reflection of his own heroic archetype mirrored in the woman before him. He seeks a queen, not a beggar, a muse, not a servant, a force that reminds him of the battles he was born to fight. When she speaks in desperation, she tells him he is her only anchor. When she speaks in essence, she tells him he is a man worthy of standing beside her. Which do you think ignites his desire again? The paradox of attraction is this: the more you grasp for him, the less he feels the pull, the more you embody your own axis, the more he bends toward you. Desire is awakened not when you remind him you need him, but when you remind him that you are whole, yet you choose him. And the psyche of the man hears those words not with his ears but with the marrow of his being. It is the difference between saying, "Don't leave me," and saying, "I see you." One is born of fear, the other of reverence. One makes him feel like a prison guard, the other like a king returning home. You might think words are fragile, but in Jungian psychology, a word is a symbol, and a symbol can shift the unconscious faster than logic ever could. Imagine 3 words, spoken not from anxiety but from embodied feminine presence, changing the entire field between you and him within 24 hours. These words are not magic because of their sound, but because of the archetypal current they awaken. They speak to his shadow and his light, to his doubt and his longing, to his deep fear that he is not enough, and to his deep desire to be chosen anyway. And so, the true fire of desire is not stoked by control, but by surrender to your own radiance. The woman who learns this does not beg for love, she becomes it, and in doing so, she reminds the man that he is capable of desire again. Desire moves like a tide, it withdraws only to test the shores, to see if the land before it still holds strength, or if it has eroded into need. When a man pulls away, his silence is not merely absence but inquiry. He is, on some unconscious level, testing the resonance of the feminine before him. Will she crumble into fear, or will she rise into her own sovereign ground? Carl Jung would describe this as the dance of animus and anima, the eternal dialogue between masculine and feminine archetypes within every soul. His retreat is often less about her flaws than about his inner uncertainty, but her reaction can either deepen the rift or restore the bridge. The psyche of man longs for polarity as flame longs for oxygen. He may not articulate it, but his unconscious seeks a woman who can reflect back the unyielding beauty of the feminine, mystery, vitality, radiance, a sense of rooted being that does not depend on his approval. In relationships, this truth hides beneath countless arguments and misunderstandings. He feels suffocated not because she loves him too much, but because love has been transmuted into demand. He feels uninspired not because she is unworthy, but because she has forgotten her archetypal role as muse. And so his desire grows dormant, as if he has forgotten the language of his own heart. This is where the power of words emerges. But words alone are not enough, they are vessels, carrying the vibration of energy beneath them. A man does not respond to the literal phrase, but to the essence in which it is spoken. When she says 3 words infused with her wholeness rather than her hunger, his unconscious stirs. He remembers, often without knowing why, that she is not only the woman he loves but the mirror of the feminine itself, the very principle that keeps him tethered to life. To the female psyche, words can soothe or inflame, to the male psyche, they either emasculate or elevate. That is why careless phrases cut deeper than intended. When a woman tells him, "You never care," she is speaking from her pain, but his unconscious hears a verdict upon his very masculinity. When she says, "You always fail," she is crying from her wounds, but his shadow translates it into a prophecy of inadequacy. Yet when she chooses words that summon him upward, she is not deceiving him but awakening his dormant archetype. In that moment, he does not feel accused, he feels remembered. And the beauty of this lies in the paradox: the woman who speaks from grounded essence does not speak to win him back, yet he often returns anyway. Why? Because her words tell him the story every man secretly longs to hear, that he is more than his failures, more than his distractions, more than his weariness. He is, in her presence, still a man worthy of desiring and being desired. These words shift the atmosphere between them, not by logic, not by persuasion, but by touching the hidden narrative that fuels every masculine heart. But there is a warning here. If she utters these words without truth within her, if she speaks them from desperation rather than embodiment, they collapse into emptiness. A man's unconscious may not be fluent in the language of self-reflection, but it is exquisitely sensitive to the vibration of authenticity. He knows, in ways he cannot explain, when he is being manipulated. And so the first work is always inner, to cleanse the feminine shadow of fear, of abandonment wounds, of the desperate cry for validation. Only then can her words ignite the fire instead of smothering it. This is why Jung emphasized individuation, the lifelong task of integrating shadow and light, of becoming whole within oneself. A woman who has walked through her own fire speaks differently. Her tone carries gravity, her presence magnetizes. She no longer utters words to save him, she utters them because they are true. And the man before her, sensing this, remembers the primal truth: desire is not about need, it is about recognition. When a man withdraws, the feminine instinct often urges pursuit, calls, questions, searching eyes that demand to know what has shifted. Yet what is pursued flees, and what is demanded resists. Jung would call this the tension of opposites, the polarity that collapses when desperation overwhelms mystery. The unconscious masculine archetype does not reawaken under pressure, but under invitation. His desire cannot be argued into existence, it must be summoned like a sleeping lion, reminded of its own strength and purpose. A woman who has forgotten her sovereignty often seeks proof of his love in his immediate response. She asks for signs, reassurance, endless words that tether her to the illusion of security. But this only feeds the cycle of absence. the more she seeks his validation, the less he feels his own freedom. The paradox is cruel yet precise. His desire cannot breathe in the air of demand, but it thrives in the atmosphere of reverence. When she remembers her own worth, she speaks in a tone that does not cling, but calls forth. The difference is subtle yet seismic. Consider the archetypal imagery Jung described. The anima in man is not merely the woman he loves, but the bridge to his unconscious, his own soul mirrored through her presence. When she embodies her essence, he feels more himself. When she abandons it for fear, he feels lost even in her arms. And so the three words that reignite desire are never about confessing need, but about reflecting back to him his deeper truth. They are the mirror in which he sees not his flaws, but his possibility. The male unconscious responds to symbolic affirmation in ways the rational mind cannot predict. A man who hears, "You never care," feels condemned, shrinking into the shadows of inadequacy. But a man who hears, "I believe you," or "I see you," finds his chest rising, his archetypal self-awakening. This is not flattery, it is invocation. It is not about telling him what he wants to hear, but what he has forgotten about himself. In those words, she speaks to the king, not the boy, to the warrior, not the wounded child. And he, feeling that recognition, cannot help but desire again, not her approval, but her presence. Yet such words must emerge from alignment. If she utters them while trembling with fear of abandonment, they ring hollow, and the masculine psyche recoils. But if she has walked through her own shadow, faced the loneliness, the grief, the ache of being unseen, and emerged sovereign, then her words carry the power of truth. This is why the feminine journey is not about pleasing the man, but about embodying her essence regardless of him. For when she does, her voice resonates with a music his soul cannot ignore. In this way, desire is not about seduction tricks or rehearsed lines, but about archetypal resonance. She becomes a force that reminds him of life itself, unpredictable, powerful, radiant. Her three words carry weight because they are not strategy, they are symbol. They speak to his hunger to be more than ordinary, to be chosen not out of fear but out of freedom. And so, within 24 hours, he feels the current shift. He finds himself drawn again, not because she chased him, but because she mirrored the man he is capable of being. This is the sacred secret of attraction. When the feminine speaks from her essence, the masculine awakens from his slumber. His silence breaks, his desire stirs, and the fire once dimmed burns again. But it is not about the sound of the words alone, it is about the soul that breathes through them. Desire does not live in the surface gestures of romance, it dwells in the undercurrents of the unconscious, where archetypes breathe and shadows whisper. When a man's passion fades, most women assume it is because they are not enough, because they must change themselves to regain what was lost. Yet Jung's insight cuts through this illusion. What dies is not the woman's beauty or worth, but the symbolic dance between masculine and feminine. He withdraws not always because he loves less, but because he no longer feels the polarity that awakens his inner fire. The masculine psyche hungers for reflection, though he rarely names it. He desires to feel seen not in his failures, not in his endless striving, but in the archetypal depth of his being. When she tells him who he is at his core, without begging, without pleading, his unconscious stirs, remembering the forgotten truth of his own vitality. This is why three words, spoken from essence, can crack open the silence of days or weeks. They do not instruct him, they do not accuse him, they remind him. And men, like all souls, return to the place where they feel most remembered. But these words are not given lightly. They are not to be wielded as tricks, as weapons to manipulate him back into her orbit. Their power lies in the vibration beneath them, the authenticity of a woman who has faced her own shadow and risen sovereign. For if she speaks from fear, her tone betrays her, and his unconscious recoils. He senses the hollowness, even if he cannot explain it. But when she speaks from her grounded core, he feels the earth itself shift. He does not analyze it, he responds. Consider how quickly the psyche moves when a symbol strikes deep. A man may resist logic, may deflect confrontation, but he cannot shield himself from resonance. Words that embody truth bypass his defenses and land directly in the marrow of his archetypal self. They bypass the ego, reaching instead the eternal warrior, lover, or king within him. He finds himself leaning toward her again, not because she convinced him, but because something in him was summoned. This is why the feminine voice carries such unique power. It is not in volume or persuasion, but in timbre, in essence, in alignment with the archetype she embodies. When she says 3 words from the axis of her being, he feels polarity return, as if the universe itself whispered through her. And what follows is instinctive. His silence dissolves, his distance collapses, his desire rekindles, often before he has realized what has changed. But let it be remembered, she does not speak for his reaction, she speaks because it is who she is. The sovereign feminine does not beg for fire, she carries it. The 3 words are not manipulation, they are revelation. They are a mirror held before him, one that reflects not his flaws but his strength. And the man, confronted with his forgotten reflection, cannot help but feel again the pull toward her. For desire, at its root, is not about novelty or conquest, it is about recognition, the sense that in her eyes, he becomes more himself than anywhere else in the world. Thus, the secret is not in what she says, but in what she embodies as she says it. The archetypal feminine does not speak to tether him, she speaks to liberate both of them into their truest forms. And when she does, the fire of attraction ceases to be a fragile flame and becomes once more the eternal blaze it was always meant to be. The moment his desire seems to vanish, the woman feels the tremor of abandonment deep within her chest. It is not just about him, it is about every echo of rejection her psyche has ever carried. The wound is ancient, buried in the unconscious, a shadow that whispers, "You are not enough." This is why she reaches for him, why she asks the questions that burn holes in the silence. Why are you distant? Did I do something wrong? Do you still want me? Yet each question, though born of pain, feeds the very void she fears. The man does not feel drawn closer, he feels burdened, as if her love has turned into a weight he cannot carry. Carl Jung warned that what is repressed will always return, and in relationships, the feminine shadow often manifests as this hunger for reassurance. But the paradox is clear, the more she seeks proof of his desire, the less he feels it. His unconscious interprets her pursuit as a denial of his freedom, and freedom is the soil in which masculine desire grows. This is why countless women find themselves trapped in the same cycle, grasping tighter, watching him drift farther, then blaming themselves for what was never theirs to control. Yet there is another way. Instead of collapsing into need, the woman who turns inward discovers the truth: desire cannot be forced outward until it is ignited within. When she reclaims her own radiance, she begins to carry a magnetic field that speaks louder than any plea. Her presence itself becomes a mirror to the masculine psyche, telling him, "I am whole. I am flame. I am not diminished by your distance." It is in this state that her words gain power, not as chains, but as keys that unlock his forgotten longing. The 3 words are not about telling him what he already knows, they are about awakening what he has forgotten. They do not lecture, they do not accuse, they do not beg. They strike a deeper chord, aligning him once again with the archetypal masculine that lives within. These words make him feel not trapped, but chosen, not condemned, but crowned. He feels his worth not as duty, but as desire. And in this shift, the polarity between them breathes again. Modern psychology confirms what Jung intuited: the unconscious craves affirmation more than logic. A man does not rekindle desire because he is reasoned with, but because he feels recognized in a way that pierces through the noise of his own self-doubt. When a woman embodies her essence and offers him words that reflect his strength, his passion, his presence, she bypasses the ego and speaks directly to the mythic figure inside him. For every man carries a hidden warrior, a king, a protector, and a lover, and it is only in the mirror of the feminine that he remembers who he truly is. But make no mistake, these words cannot be rehearsed like lines from a script. They must flow from authenticity, or they crumble into manipulation. If her voice shakes with fear, he feels the tremor. If her energy clings for security, he senses the desperation. But if she has faced her own shadow, if she has walked through the fire of loneliness and emerged sovereign, her words resonate like truth itself. He cannot resist, not because she has ensnared him, but because he feels himself more alive in her presence than in his own solitude. Thus, desire is never about forcing him to return. It is about summoning him through essence, through authenticity, through the archetypal current that only the feminine can awaken. In that state, 3 words become enough to shift everything. They are not a spell, but a revelation. They are the reminder that beneath distance and silence, his heart still longs to burn. Every man carries within him a silent struggle between his ego and his essence. The ego insists on independence, on retreat, on proving he is untethered. But his essence, the unconscious masculine archetype, craves polarity, the magnetic presence of the feminine who awakens him to himself. When he withdraws, it is often not because he no longer desires her, but because he has fallen into dissonance with his own archetype. He forgets he is king, warrior, lover, creator. And in forgetting, his desire fades like a fire starved of air. The woman who understands this does not panic at his absence. She does not claw at his silence with frantic questions or drown him in a tide of accusations. Instead, she remembers what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. She realizes that her worth does not fracture because of his distance. In that remembrance, she regains her axis. She becomes once again the archetypal feminine, mysterious yet grounded, radiant yet unyielding, sovereign yet inviting. And from this place, her words flow differently. Imagine her standing before him, no desperation in her eyes, no trembling in her voice. Instead, she carries the weight of her own shadow work, the calm of a woman who has met her own loneliness and not been destroyed by it. When she speaks 3 words, they are not a plea but a proclamation. They remind him of who he is when he stands in his strength. They pierce through the fog of his retreat and touch the marrow of his soul. These words are not about her, they are about him. They are the mirror through which he sees his forgotten fire. Modern trauma psychology adds a further layer: men often retreat when shame awakens. If he feels inadequate, unworthy, unable to meet her needs, he hides in distance. But when she offers words that affirm his essence rather than spotlight his failures, shame dissolves. He does not feel like a boy scolded, he feels like a man restored. And in that restoration, desire is reborn. Not the shallow desire of novelty, but the deep desire of recognition. He longs for her again because in her presence, he remembers himself. These words, however, are not merely external. They must be infused with her inner energy. If she says them while clinging for survival, they fall flat, hollow syllables that his unconscious rejects. But when spoken from sovereignty, they vibrate with authenticity. He feels the frequency of truth even if he cannot name it. And that frequency is irresistible. It calls him back not just to her body, but to his own soul. This is why so many women exhaust themselves chasing, while a sovereign woman needs only presence. She understands that it is not her job to reignite his fire with endless effort. Her task is simpler yet far deeper, to embody her essence, to speak from her core, and to allow the archetypal current to flow through her words. In this way, she ceases to be the pursuer and becomes once again the flame. And the masculine, ever drawn to fire, cannot help but return. 3 words may sound fragile against the weight of silence, but they are not. They are symbols, and symbols move the unconscious faster than any logic. They speak to him beyond language, beyond memory, beyond resistance. They summon his archetype back to life, and with it, his desire. Within 24 hours, the shift begins, not because she trapped him, but because she freed him to remember himself. There is a moment, subtle and almost imperceptible, when the air between two souls changes. He, who once turned away, suddenly finds himself restless in his distance. His thoughts wander back to her, not because she has chased him, but because something in her energy has shifted. This is the mystery Jung described: when the unconscious is touched by symbol, it reorganizes itself. His silence no longer feels like power, it begins to ache like absence. And he feels compelled, without knowing why, to bridge the distance. The feminine, when embodied in her sovereignty, does not plead for his return. She does not try to control the outcome, because she understands the paradox of polarity: control kills desire, but freedom ignites it. Her power is not in grasping but in radiance, not in clinging but in standing rooted. This is the essence of the anima in Jungian thought: she is the doorway through which man encounters his own depths. When she speaks from her core, she does not merely address him, she awakens him. The 3 words that reignite his desire are not a script to memorize, but an invocation to embody. They shift depending on the moment, but their essence is the same: they remind him of his worth, his presence, his potency. Whether she whispers, "I see you," or "I trust you," or "You are enough," the effect is archetypal. His ego hears a phrase, but his unconscious feels initiation. He is no longer the distracted man retreating from love, he becomes again the masculine force that longs to move toward her flame. And this is not manipulation. It is truth spoken with reverence. The feminine shadow wants to control, to force, to tether him through guilt or demand. But the integrated feminine knows that desire cannot be commanded. It must be invited, evoked, remembered. Her words are not a trick, they are a mirror. She does not say them to make him stay, she says them because they are true, because she has done her own inner work and can see beyond his mask of withdrawal. And in that moment, he feels not judged but restored. This restoration is powerful because it touches the deepest wound of the masculine, the fear of inadequacy. Every man carries it, though most will never confess it. Distance is often a shield against the terror that he cannot meet her needs, that he will be exposed as unworthy. But when she speaks words that crown rather than cut, he feels safe to return. His armor dissolves, his shame softens, and his desire flows freely again. She has not only reignited attraction, she has healed a fracture in his unconscious. Yet her power lies in balance. If she speaks these words from emptiness, hoping only for his response, they lose their resonance. The masculine senses the hunger behind them and recoils. But when she speaks them from fullness, from a place of already being whole, they vibrate as truth. He is drawn not to her need, but to her essence. It is not about saving him or saving the relationship, it is about awakening what is already alive within both. Thus, within 24 hours, the field between them shifts. He finds himself recalling her not as the woman who demanded, but as the woman who inspired. His desire reignites, not because she chased him, but because she reflected him. She did not shrink when he withdrew, she expanded. And in her expansion, he felt the call to return, not to rescue her, but to meet her. This is the secret pulse of attraction. When she embodies sovereignty, her words carry the power of archetypes, and archetypes reshape desire itself. When a man rediscovers his desire, it rarely happens in the way the ego expects. It is not the logical conclusion of an argument, nor the result of relentless pursuit. It comes quietly, almost like dawn, an inner recognition that cannot be resisted. He feels the pull again, not because she explained, not because she demanded, but because she spoke the words that bypassed his defenses and awakened the masculine archetype within him. Jung knew this truth well. The unconscious is swayed not by reasoning but by symbols, and a single phrase can carry the weight of an entire myth. The feminine, when aligned with her essence, becomes the keeper of those symbols. She does not weaponize them, but she knows their power. She knows that words like, "I see you," are not simply statements, they are invocations, reminders that he is more than the shell he has hidden behind. They speak to the king beneath the soldier, the creator beneath the worker, the lover beneath the distracted man. And when he hears them spoken in truth, something in him remembers. His body may not understand, but his soul does. It is here that the polarity between them ignites once more. She is not reaching outward, she is radiating inward. Her presence itself becomes a flame, and the masculine instinctively moves toward fire. This is why so many women exhaust themselves trying to do more texts, more explanations, more proof of love, yet it only pushes him further. But when she does less, when she grounds deeper, when her words emerge not from fear but from sovereignty, she becomes irresistible. He does not even realize why he feels the pull, only that he does. And this is the paradox that so few understand. The woman who knows her worth does not manipulate his desire, she reminds it of its own nature. She does not try to keep him, she allows him to choose. And the moment a man feels chosen rather than trapped, his desire grows wild again. Because choice awakens freedom, and freedom awakens passion. In this way, her 3 words are not chains, they are wings. They give him the freedom to rise, and in rising, he chooses to fly back to her flame. But these words cannot be spoken by the woman who still lives in fear of abandonment. For her, they will always carry a tremor of need, a vibration that betrays her longing. They can only be embodied by the woman who has met her own shadow and survived it, the one who has walked through loneliness, betrayal, silence, and yet discovered that she remains whole. That wholeness is the alchemy. When she speaks from it, her words vibrate with undeniable truth, and truth is magnetic. This is why men who seemed lost return. Why passion thought dead burns again. It is not magic, not manipulation, not a game. It is psychology, myth, energy, and soul. It is the eternal law of polarity, the masculine moving toward the feminine who embodies herself fully. Desire is reborn not when she chases, but when she stands. Not when she begs, but when she embodies. And her 3 words, like a key turning in a lock, open the door that had been closed. The deeper secret is this: she no longer fears his silence, because she knows she can call him back, not always as lover, not always as partner, but always as man awakening to his essence. And whether he returns or not, she remains flame. For her words are not meant to control him, but to reveal her own sovereignty. That is the highest truth of attraction, to give without losing, to invite without clinging, to awaken without needing. The dance of desire is older than language itself. Beneath every relationship, beneath every silence and return, runs the archetypal current that Carl Jung described, the eternal pull between anima and animus, feminine and masculine, soul and shadow. When a woman forgets this truth, she believes love is a transaction, attention for devotion, reassurance for loyalty. But when she remembers, she sees clearly, desire is not bargained, it is evoked. The three words that reignite passion are powerful not because of their syllables, but because they restore this forgotten balance. A man does not awaken when he is told what he lacks. He awakens when he feels recognized in the fullness of his potential. The feminine voice, when sovereign, does not criticize him into action, it calls him upward with reverence. This is why her three words cut deeper than any argument, they crown rather than condemn. They make him feel not like a boy failing, but like a man becoming. And the masculine, when honored, cannot help but move toward the source of that honoring. This truth explains the paradox so many women face. When she demands closeness, he distances, when she embodies presence, he approaches. The unconscious does not respond to force, it responds to symbol. Her words become that symbol, reminding him of his essence. When she whispers, "I trust you," his fear of inadequacy softens. When she breathes, "I see you," his armor dissolves. When she declares, "You are enough," the wound of shame begins to heal. In these moments, desire reignites not because she has given him something new, but because she has returned him to himself. Yet she can only speak these words when she has already faced her own shadow. If she clings to them as spells to manipulate him, they wither. He may be deceived for a moment, but the unconscious knows when truth is absent. Only the woman who has walked through her own fire, through loneliness, rejection, silence, can speak them with the gravity of authenticity. This is why her presence matters more than the words themselves. Without essence, the syllables collapse. With essence, even the simplest phrase becomes alchemy. And here lies the deepest secret, the woman who learns this no longer fears his withdrawal. She no longer begs for his desire, because she knows she carries the power to summon it. Not by chasing, but by being. Not by demanding, but by embodying. Her radiance is not diminished by his absence, it grows stronger, and it is that strength that calls him home. He returns not because she bound him, but because freedom itself led him back. This transformation is more than relational, it is spiritual. She has moved beyond the shadow of dependency into the light of sovereignty. She has learned to use words not as pleas but as mirrors, reflecting the truth of the masculine without losing the truth of herself. And in this way, she becomes irresistible, not because she mastered seduction, but because she mastered her own being. When she speaks those three words, she is not trying to make him stay. She is declaring what is eternal. And whether he returns or not, her essence remains unbroken. That is the ultimate Jungian lesson. Individuation means becoming whole within, so that relationship becomes a choice, not a lifeline. For the woman who embodies this, desire is no longer fragile. It does not vanish with his silence, nor depend on his recognition. It is born from within her and reflected outward, a fire that cannot be extinguished. And the man who encounters such a woman knows instinctively, this is not someone he can ignore. When Jung spoke of the anima and animus, he spoke not merely of romance, but of mirrors. Every man sees his soul through the feminine, and every woman glimpses her hidden strength through the masculine. Desire is nothing more and nothing less than these mirrors aligning. When a man drifts into silence, the alignment falters. He forgets who he is in her presence, and she forgets the power of her own sovereignty. But the woman who remembers does not plead for recognition, she embodies it. And in that embodiment, her words cut through his forgetfulness like lightning across a dark sky. These words, the three that reignite him, are not about charm. They are about truth. Truth spoken in resonance awakens the unconscious more than any performance ever could. When she utters, "I see you," it is not a strategy, it is an unveiling. She looks past his masks, past his ego's retreat, and she addresses the archetype slumbering within him. Few men can resist that gaze, for it does not accuse nor flatter, it remembers. And the man who is remembered cannot help but burn again. But this remembering is not hers alone to give. First, she must remember herself. She must claim her own shadow, heal the parts that begged for approval, soften the wounds that screamed for validation. A woman who has not done this will speak the right words with the wrong energy, and the masculine will recoil. He feels the hunger beneath them, the plea disguised as affirmation. But the sovereign woman speaks from fullness, and her fullness makes the words vibrate as if the universe itself were speaking through her. This is why desire can reignite in 24 hours, why a man who seemed lost to silence suddenly reaches out, calls, touches her again as though no distance had existed. It is not because she chased him down, but because she shifted the archetypal field. Her presence became flame, and flame always calls forth the masculine. He moves toward it instinctively, pulled by a gravity older than thought. He does not analyze why, he simply acts. And yet, she does not wait with desperation. She does not utter the words hoping to bend him to her will. She speaks them because they are who she is, a reflection of truth, a mirror of archetypes, a woman whole in herself. If he returns, it is because he is ready to meet her in that truth. If he does not, her sovereignty remains untouched. She does not lose herself in his absence, because she has already found herself in her own presence. Here lies the liberation most never reach. Attraction, when rooted in fear, becomes a battlefield of need and withdrawal. But attraction, when rooted in sovereignty, becomes a dance of freedom and choice. The three words are powerful not because they bind him, but because they release her. They allow her to speak without fear, to embody without condition, to love without losing. And in this freedom, paradoxically, she becomes irresistible. For the masculine craves not chains, but polarity. He desires the woman who does not beg for his presence but honors it. The one who does not collapse in his absence, but glows regardless. To such a woman, he returns not because she clung, but because he could not stay away. Her fire reminds him of his own. Her sovereignty makes him remember his strength. And her words, simple yet eternal, open the door to desire once more. And so, attraction is not saved by strategy. It is reborn through essence. She, the sovereign feminine, does not chase, she becomes. And in becoming, she reignites not only his passion, but her own. Desire, at its deepest level, is not about conquest or comfort, it is about remembrance. The man who withdraws is not rejecting her, but fleeing his own shadow. He hides because he has forgotten who he is, because the mirror of his own inadequacy feels too sharp to face. But when she embodies sovereignty, when she stands as flame rather than plea, her presence softens the shadow. And in 3 words, she offers him not rescue but revelation. She does not tell him what to do, she reminds him of who he is. That is why his desire surges back with a force that feels almost fated. Jung would call this the work of individuation, the lifelong integration of shadow and light. For the woman, this means no longer speaking from her wounds, but from her wholeness. No longer needing him to validate her worth, but allowing her worth to validate itself. When she reaches this place, the three words she speaks are not fragile, they are thunder. They reverberate through his unconscious, reordering the polarity between them. He feels her not as demand but as destiny, not as pressure but as presence. And in that presence, his desire rises. But the true secret is this: her power was never about him. The three words that reignite him are only possible because she first spoke them to herself. She looked into her own mirror, into her own shadow, and whispered, "I see you. I trust you. You are enough." From this inner axis, she could then speak them outward without hunger, without desperation, without disguise. And it is this authenticity that made them irresistible. He was not responding to a script, he was responding to truth. Modern psychology echoes the same wisdom. Relationships rooted in external validation collapse under pressure, while those rooted in internal sovereignty endure. A woman who chases desire loses herself in the pursuit. A woman who embodies desire calls it forth without lifting a finger. For attraction is not in technique, it is in essence. And essence cannot be faked. It must be lived, breathed, carried in every word and silence. So the story ends not with his return, but with her liberation. She has discovered that the power to ignite desire is not about bending another, but about standing whole. And in that wholeness, she becomes paradox itself. The freer she is, the more he longs for her, the less she clings, the more he reaches, the less she demands, the more he gives. This is not manipulation, it is nature, the eternal dance of polarity. And should he return, he finds a woman transformed. Not the one who begged for closeness, but the one who radiates sovereignty. He feels chosen, not chased. He feels honored, not suffocated. He feels his masculine essence drawn out, not because she needed him, but because she saw him. And in that seeing, desire awakens like fire catching in dry wood, sudden, fierce, undeniable. The journey is complete. She has moved from fear into power, from dependence into freedom, from silence into truth. She has learned that the deepest love is not found in clinging but in choosing, not in demand but in invitation. And with this knowledge, she holds the final paradox in her hands. She no longer fears losing him, because she has already found herself. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.